Every bee serves the hive, not itself. Every role, no matter how small, sustains the whole. Here, former and present journalists gather like bees, drawn to what's raw, real, and sweet. Each story is a drop of nectar, gathered from the wild fields of experience, spun into something golden. From the sting of truth to the sweetness of healing, this is where we build the hive. Bees don't question their purpose, they simply build. They gather light from the broken things, turn it to sweetness, and leave the world better than they found it. We do the same. One story, one truth, one drop of honey at a time. This is the Honey Pot, where words heal, hearts rebuild, and purpose buzzes loud. The Honey Pot is brought to you by Madrala Law Firm, your legal team for life's unexpected stings, and by TrueCore Wellness, helping you heal from the inside out. Together, they keep our hive strong. Hey, honeys. Thank you for joining us for the Honey Pod. I'm Paulina, and today we are joined with Vanessa Villanueva. Now, Vanessa and I worked together at my most recent station, and if you guys happen to have been watching my previous podcast, the And That's Okay podcast, the mental health podcast, we spoke briefly about your departure from news, and you were leaving on a leap of faith.
That's what we're calling it. Yeah, that's what it was.
That's what it was. And now that leap of faith has paid off. You are officially working. Well, I'll let you kind of get into the details of all of that. But I think let's get back to when we were working together in the newsroom and then kind of this leap of faith that you went on and how we got here.
So, yes, I was producing at the same station where you were the anchor that I was working very closely with. So I never wanted to get into news. Let me just preface with that. And I think that that's something that a lot of people in media can relate to, because I know when I was going through school, there were so many people who had other dreams. Like my dream was to be in a talk show environment.
Okay.
Like I wanted to have my own talk show. When they'd ask like, "Oh, what are you here for?" I'm like, "I want to have my own talk show," you know? It was disheartening to go through school like that, not be a track. So this was like the closest thing to it, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So my intention was never to work in a newsroom, but there I was, found myself there. And so it was more of like, okay, like, we went to school, we have this degree, like radio wasn't working out. Maybe this is where we're supposed to be. And I signed that contract because I was like, we're doing it. We're committing. We're doing 3 years. 3 years is nothing. And it was honestly, probably like 6 months in, I was like, I don't know. This is not like for me. And I was
because you were working with me.
It was actually. I was like, Paulina's a no. Yeah. No, it was not.
Partially that.
I just, you know what? I honestly, in hindsight, it's not even like the rush or it was a combination of things for me. But yes, personalities in a newsroom are challenging. There's a lot of type A people, and everyone's very proud of their work.
Right.
Everyone has an opinion, and they have a strong opinion. So was new for me because I'm used to being the person in any work environment where you're the most creative one, or you're the one coming up with the ideas, or whatnot. Not that there's not other work environments that are like that, but news is like this. Everyone's running at 100 miles an hour, and like, you want to talk about deadlines, that is the only place where deadlines mean literally that.
Right.
Like
down to the second.
Yes. Like a deadline isn't that, like even now in my job, like we say deadlines, and yes, we have deadlines and we have hard deadlines, but it is not like news where like you're going on air and it is all black deadline, So it's a different beast in that regard. So personalities were high. Everyone's always in a high, like
very high performance mindset.
Yes, exactly. That was definitely part of it. But I just didn't find myself like getting excited to go to work. It was always like so it was more of a trying to find my peace in the storm. And what led me out of it was, like you said, very much a leap of faith. It was very much I don't think that I can keep doing this anymore. So for me, being a person of faith, I really needed the Lord to help me. I was taking a trip, and in my head, you know how like when you're just kind of like, maybe I'm burnout, maybe I just need like a break.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to disassociate from my life. And so I was going on a trip. So I was like, okay, that's going to clear my, my mind. Right before I went on my trip, I was sitting in church, and I just the sermon was so loud and clear to me that basically gave me the clarity of what am I doing? Because basically the sermon talked about how sometimes when we get so caught up in our day-to-day things, we forget that there's a bigger picture.
Sure.
Like everyone has a purpose, right? So like what are we doing? And so when I really started like focusing on that and specifically asked the Lord, like, okay, Lord, what was I made for? For me, I heard very, very loud and clear that it was incarceration, which I have no ties to whatsoever. So that was very odd to me. So it started down this path of like, and think about this. I'm sitting in a newsroom and I'm like, how the heck am I gonna get to
To where you're telling me to go to,
right.
Lord.
Like that is not even close. Like maybe if it was like, I don't know, even just like police work, I'm like, okay, PIO, like
Yeah.
that's a jump. But no, I was like, that's so far. I don't even know. So it led me down this whole long journey of just exploring that. And as I explored that, I was like, okay, I'll find that kind of work, Lord, and then I'll transition. No, it was very clear. Quit the job. And I was like, oh no. I signed a contract, like, doesn't work that way. I was definitely like, no, we can just tough it out. So I went on my trip, I came back, and it was almost instantaneous. Like to this day, and I don't think I've shared this with you before, but I got back. I was gone for like a whole 10 days. I was gone for like a week and a half. And I got back and I was driving to work for the first time, first shift back. I didn't even know I was going to quit that day. I didn't have that plan.
Really?
Nope. I walked into work and I was like, here we go. All right, we're gonna tough this out. We're a year and a half in, we're gonna go another year and a half. And I got to my chair and I sat down and I just couldn't focus. Like everything in me just and it wasn't like a anger, like I'm gonna get out of here because I don't want to be here anymore. It was just like this overwhelming sense of like I don't belong here anymore.
Sure.
I texted Devin, my partner, and I was just like, I think I'm gonna quit my job. And then I put my phone down and I went and grabbed the executive producer and I was like, can I talk to you? And I was just so honest. And I said that. I said, listen, I don't feel like this is where I belong. And honestly, it sounds cheesy, but I'm like, this is a disservice to the people at this point because as a producer, as anybody in media, your first and most important thing is making sure you're in it for the right reasons.
Right.
Like if you're not in it for the reasons of being able to serve the public, then you shouldn't be there. And so in my head and heart, I was like, I don't know that I can keep doing this. So we had that conversation and she was like, okay. And then I ended up giving like 6 weeks notice. So I was like, okay, that's plenty of time. I can find a job. Oh no,
No.
no open doors. I was trying to apply to jobs that I was getting, doors were getting shut so quickly that like I'd find a job. And then by the time I'd get home to apply for it, it was gone. Like the link was gone. And I was like, this is nuts.
God was like, I said what I said, but I didn't tell you how we're going to get there.
And one of my favorite things that I always joke about, which I'm sure you'll appreciate as someone who's worked in multiple newsrooms, as I was transitioning out and people started finding out, everyone in the station kept asking me, so where are you going? Or like, are you staying? Like, where are you
Yeah.
moving to? Which was
Because that's the natural transition in news, right? It's when your contract ends or if you're quitting, you're usually quitting to go to another market or you're quitting to go into a
right.
job.
Yeah. And that was baffling to me. I was like, what do you mean where am I going? I'm going home? Like Vegas is my home. And I was very lucky. I know that I was very lucky to get a job in my hometown,
Sure.
especially in a market that is what it is in Vegas. So I was very lucky in that regard. And so in my head, I was like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I'm just going to stay right here. That was funny to me that they kept asking me that. And then got closer and closer to my end date, and I still had nothing lined up. So to go back to what you originally said, like leap of faith, oh, beyond. Because as you know, as everyone who's in media knows, I broke a contract.
Right.
So that was a whole different conversation. And I told them, I said, look, I have no intention of staying in news. I am not trying to go to a competitor. And I could if I wanted to, because I sat on the Nevada Broadcasters Board in that season. Is there any way we can come to like an agreement? I will sign whatever you need me to sign. I will say whatever you need me to say.
Sure.
Unfortunately, it didn't end that way. And you know what? I struggled a long time with a lot of anger and like just I don't know, just overall disappointment in that process because to me it felt like such a petty thing,
Well,
you know?
let's talk about it, right? Because you were a producer, Vanessa. And so I don't want to say that you guys are at the bottom of the totem pole, but when it comes to pay, right? Like
Mhm.
it doesn't compare to what people on air are making.
Right.
And so for them to come after you, which they did a whole, like almost year and a half later,
Yeah. Mhm.
for $2,000. I mean, it was petty. It was
Yeah.
wild. And I think I felt guilty almost because I know that, I've broken contract before. I know so many people who have broken contract, and even women who are listening to this, men too.
Mhm.
Uh, we get out, and as long as you're not, like you said, jumping over into the same market size or the same place in that
Mhm.
same city, you can generally get away with not having to pay out that
Right.
breaking
Well,
contract fee.
and I think just real fast, I just want to say how much I'm like so proud of you for creating this type of a community because had this type of resource been available to me at the time, I would have been able to ask more questions, but there's just nowhere to go.
No.
Like everyone, I was just asking everyone around me, and anyone around me was telling me the same thing. Oh, they're not going to come after you, or this was my experience. And so, I mean, I'm grateful for everybody giving me their perceptions and their experiences. But at the end of the day, like legally, did I have any like connections? Not really. I mean, people like, oh, I might know someone, but it was like, such a hard thing to navigate. And you can't just really Google, what do you do if you,
You're right, yeah.
like there's not really help for that. And so it's not like a, super woe is me thing, but I mean, I didn't have a lot saved up. And that was transparently what I told them. I said, look, I can't even give you what you're asking. And the interesting thing, if I'm listening to this, I'm like, okay, well, that you're a big girl. You signed what you signed
Mhm.
for sure. And so that's ended up being the conversation when I was like, hey, like, I don't have the payout. I said, so I guess I'm just going to have to stay because I don't have it.
Yeah,
And they wouldn't let me stay.
right.
So then it became, now I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place because you're not going to let me stay, but you're not going to let me go, but then you're not going to let me go without paying. So like now what?
How do you want that to work out?
Like I'm like
Can you make it make
it's
sense?
A or it's B. Like I don't what is happening here? And so that was really frustrating for me because I was like, okay, like yeah, I signed what I signed. I'm a big girl. I read it. I knew what it was. So sure, I will write it out. And then it was, no, you will not write it out. That was a really hard thing because then I was like, okay, well, so we came to the agreement of, I'll give you what I have. And then they were like, yeah, and then we'll give you X amount of time to give us the rest. Was that X amount of time a decent amount of time? No, it was not. But that's besides the point. So I went on the faith of, listen, I know what I heard and I know that the Lord was telling me to leave. So I'm going to trust that he's going to provide however that is. And we're not talking like, oh, maybe I'll, find $20 on the street. We're talking thousands of dollars that I didn't have. And I don't have the means to just go out and find that. I was really just like, well, we'll figure it out. And you're right, about probably a year later, well into my next job, they did come back for the remainder. And I thought about fighting it. And honestly, I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, I pray that I'm never in a space where I have to do that to someone. Luckily, at that rebuild my savings to the point of almost exactly what they needed. And I told you at the time because you were so honest, and I love that about you. You were like, absolutely, you should not do that. And I was like, here's the thing: I'm just going to pretend that I am paying into some young journalist paycheck.
Well, because here's the thing, I actually did it. First of all, this entire podcast was kind of sparked off of that, and then it really started, like, it grinded my gears because you weren't
Yeah.
the only one
Mm,
that had gotten served with, this paperwork that you owe money.
yeah.
And I'm like, if you're gonna go after people, then go after people who are at least making X amount of money,
Sure.
But like, first of all, you're not even in the industry anymore. Second of all, I've seen so many of the people that we worked with get screwed out of their own contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them tried to get legal help, didn't like succeed at legal help. We just kind of get again, the corporations are set up in a way that they're supposed to make you intimidated, right? Like they're supposed to make you feel like the little guy. And when we don't have enough of those good resources around us, then you do feel like the little guy. And you're just kind of like, how do I get out of this? You know, I moved here for a job. You guys really screwed me out of this. And we've seen this time and time again. And whether it was contracts, or I talk about this on another episode where our station had like taken people from our station and moved them to another one. And then 2 months later, those people lost their jobs, you know? And it's like, I just moved here for you guys. And so we're seeing these kind of trends more and more. And at some point you have to ask yourself, somebody's got to be held accountable, you know?
Right.
And it's not a matter of I'm bitter. No, it's I'm putting my time and my effort into this as well.
Right.
And there has to not only be that you can hold me to my contracts, but I can hold you to yours.
Right. No, that's a really well put point. And I would agree with you that, you know, I just knew my experience, right? And as someone who didn't have a lot of experience in the news world, I just figured, you know what, this is just what it is. And there's nothing I can do about it kind of thing. And I just was like, let's just make peace with it and move forward. But looking back to, I'm like, I don't know, like it just felt so petty, and it was very par for the course. Because part of the reason I think I struggled with working in the capacity of media, I just didn't feel like it was like a team effort. And that's like the nice way of saying it. But it just didn't feel like a well-oiled machine. It felt very individualistic and like, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. If everybody does their individual things, then we can have this one collective thing. Okay, break. I'll give you a specific example. I remember going to the news director because for me, Vegas is home. Vegas has always been home. I grew up here. This is my community. I love this city. Knowing there was a lot of transplants in the newsroom, one of the things that struck me as almost, I was so shocked to see how fast people got thrown into being out in the community. Like you're being thrown into this community, and how much do you actually know other than what you like looked up online? And I remember I went to her, I said, hey, like, you know what would be really awesome is if we just like spent a day or an afternoon or whatever, and we got one of those limousine thingies and we just took the whole station and went and drove around the city and just got to know the city. Even just an acknowledgement of that, like, hey, like that, that's a really not even great idea, but just like, hey, like, you know what? That's very thoughtful, Vanessa, that you want to like try and help your counterparts like understand the city from the perspective of a local, especially because we're serving the community, right? No. It was like, why would we do that?
You know what? I'm going to go back to my last two stations, and I've been to more than two stations prior to this, but the two that I've stayed at the longest where my residencies were Louisiana and Kentucky. Before that, honestly, in Louisiana, I think because we were also building the station from the ground up, we had like full-blown courses on like where things were. Also, in Cajun country, everything is spelled differently than what it's pronounced.
Okay.
Right? So you had to kind of learn a Chafalaya. You had to learn the Boudreaux and the Thibodeaux. And so like there were literal words that we had to learn and study and be like, this is what this means. This is what this, like, that last name is Arsenault. It doesn't look like that, but that's what it's, pronounced. It's not David, it's David, it's this, it's that. So there was a lot of that, right? Making sure that we understood how to say things and pronounce things properly on air. Now, I wouldn't say that we had that in Kentucky, where they went over every nuance of kind of how to say things. But what they did do, because we were all transplants into the city, was that they did take us around.
Yeah.
They really did show us around kind of, okay, this is this city. This is the new up and coming part of it. This is the arts district. And they had somebody who was from that area who knew enough about Louisville to take us around and really show us those spots.
Yeah.
To give us a tour. So, and I honestly, I think part of that tour was what I used and incorporated into how I would find stories.
I love to hear that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I only had my experience I had. So knowing that there are places out there that will take care of that, because you're representing the community in media. And I think that's the thing. Like, it still holds such a close place in my heart. Like, I still am such an advocate of people who work in newsrooms, people who are like for the beginning to the end, like literally from the front desk to the security guards to every single person in that building. And I will die advocating for newsrooms, especially local newsrooms, being such a vital asset to communities, because those are some of the hardest working humans that I've ever worked with. Like we're talking, like I'm telling you, the deadlines are crazy. But more than that, it's like nowhere else. And I've worked a lot of jobs. I've worked in 12 different career fields. Okay. So I kind of know what I'm talking about.
But so
But
not 12, but I've had enough. Yeah, where you can really
like different careers. Yeah, it's
where
crazy.
you look at them, nothing compares to the newsroom.
No,
The newsroom.
because the thing is like you're waking up and you're going to work, regardless of your position in the newsroom, you're going to work with no idea what's ahead of you.
Right.
No idea. And then even if you try and create an idea, which was where I personally struggled because I would try to create structure and I would try and create normalcy and I would try and create like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And the amount of times I got told like, you can't plan ahead, you can't plan ahead, you can't. I'm like, yes, we can. I can totally control the future. Yeah, no, could not. But that's
and then
been
breaking news happens and
yes.
everything you've just worked on blows up in a matter of seconds.
You know what? You know when I knew this wasn't for me is every time there was breaking news and not just like dramatic, heavy breaking news, even just, I don't want to call it minor, but like, you know, a breaking news of like the governor's about to talk or something like that, right? Certain people's faces would light up, like light up. You're one of them. You'd be like, what are we doing? How are we? And my soul would leave my body and I would be like, like, how would it feel? Can this not happen on my day off? Can this just have happened an hour later, please? Like and that's how I knew because I would see the difference in the people who were built for that were like, this is okay, let's go.
This is what we're trained for.
This is what, yes. And it brought you all to life. It did not bring me to life. It brought me to the end of myself. I was so over it. Hopefully, if you're in a newsroom, you don't relate to what I'm saying. If you do relate to what I'm saying,
then maybe
you should not be in a newsroom. But here's what I will say. It is the best training ground for any career because now in my job, my boss laughs at me every day because my number one motto for my team, because I'm a supervisor, I'm like, you have to pivot on a swivel. And I'm so grateful that the Lord put me in a newsroom for over a year to learn how to pivot on a swivel because that is such a gift in any industry to be able to not get married to your own idea, to not be so like grandfathered into like, this is the only thing that could possibly happen, to be able to ebb and flow and hear and listen and grow and say, oh, okay, maybe that's not it. Throw that out. What a gift. Do I want to do it every single day, all day long? No, I don't. But I'm grateful that I learned it and I'm grateful that I now can apply it, not just to jobs, but to life. Before a newsroom, I was not the friend where you could cancel plans. Like, we have plans. Be there. I don't understand. And now I'm like, it's fine, friend. Like, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I could be all the way to your house in your driveway and you're like, I don't feel good. Okay, that's fine. Because nothing is more upsetting than spending a whole 7-hour shift writing a show for it to just be thrown out for breaking news. Every time I had to kill a line, every time I had to delete something, Paulina, a part of my soul was like, no, I worked so hard on that.
I feel like, well, let's go back to that, right? Because that's exactly, I think, where me and you used to like clash in the beginning because like you said, you wanted to be creative and you were very creative. And I love that about you. And I love that you had this vision of we can do this and we can pull this. And my thing with you was, Vanessa, we can do it all, but let's get a clean show first. And then we can get to all these like really creative things because like you, I'm very much like, let's go out of the box. We can do this. Hey, like we have that camera and nobody told us that. They used to tell us we couldn't. And you came in and you started to challenge that too. And I liked that because for the longest time, if I'd be like, oh, can we get a camera shot? No. Can we do that? No. And then Vanessa came in and all of a sudden we could do these things. And I was like, okay, well then clearly we could, but it just took, sometimes it takes like more people, more voices.
I'm a Y girl. Yeah.
And so I'm also a Y girl, which is, it's good and bad, right? In the newsroom. And so I ask why. I will ask you 6 times as to, okay, well, if we're writing it this way, can you explain to me why? And it's not even me trying to be disobedient. It's just 2 reasons. One, if I'm supposed to learn something from here, the way I learn is I need to understand why.
Yes.
Right? So that this way I know not to do it again. So if we can't say this, it's because XYZ, that will stick to me. That makes sense. I accept it. I move on. But 2, it's like, but can we really not do it? Or are we just being lazy and we can't do it? You know, because I think accountability. And we've seen that we get held accountable all the time, right? We need you guys to do a VOSOT, a package, a script, cut this, cut that, you know, like, and we are held to all of these things and all these ideas that managers have.
Mhm.
But when we turn around and we're like, hey, we need help on this, sometimes everyone's just like, it's just easier to be, oh, let's not just mess with them or let's not bother with them. So,
Mhm.
like, we can't do that. We can't do that.
Mhm.
Okay, it'll take you 3 extra steps, but are you sure we can't do that or are we just being lazy? And
Yeah.
we had both of that, right, in our newsroom where
Yeah.
we've had those moments where they were like, we can't do that. And I was like,
But we can.
but we
So
can.
one
And
of the
let me show
biggest
you.
things, I love that you said that, because one of the biggest things, again, that I teach my team now in a supervisor role, and I learned this from being supervised. I tell them every time I'm training them on something, even today, I'm like, there's policy and there's preference.
Right.
Policies we can't break because now in my line of work, we're federally funded, right? And same in a newsroom. There's certain policies you can't break because you're at the mercy
Safety
of the
and
owners
yeah.
and you know what it is. And then there's preference. And preference is, I think, harder, especially when you're in a manager position and you're kind of set in your ways and you've learned things a certain way. Like, yeah, I have preferences. And does it bother me sometimes that my staff will do things a different way? Yeah, because I think my ways are best. But a good leader, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but a good leader, I will not get in their way. I will encourage them and say, hey, this is why I do it this way. This is what works for me. They will come back with their, well, I want to try it this way. And I'm like, okay, as long as it gets done,
Yeah.
that's what matters. As long as we're within those policies, however you choose to do it is on you. Now, 9 out of 10 times they come back and they're like, yeah, Vanessa, you were right. And I'm like, that's right. Thank you very much. But ultimately, I am, and it's, I would say anybody who's in a managerial position, your job is to uphold the policy. Your job is not to pressure people into preference. And I feel in my experience in the newsroom, and again, I only had the one, well, I had two technically, but the other one was a lifestyle show. I was more being pressured into preferences that were frustrating to me because I didn't understand it. And I would ask that.
Right.
I literally ask, is this a policy or is this a preference? And no one could explain that to me. And that was disheartening, because then I just felt like, okay, so am I just trying, like, at the whim of how you feel? Or is this really something? Because at the time, like, yeah, I'm out of news now, but I was planning to stay in media. I wasn't sure where I was going to go, but I was planning to stay, like, working in either newsrooms or working in TV shows, like something. So I was really trying to absorb. And I think a lot of people who are either just starting or in the bigger markets,
Smaller markets.
okay, people who are in the smaller markets, you're really just trying to learn.
Yeah.
And you're trying to just take in as much, because I don't know about everyone else's school experience, but not the same. There's good things about school. I will be an advocate of school, but I had a very unique experience in my schooling because I went back to school later on. I was lucky enough to have an internship before I got to, like, my final 2 years of school. When I got to that final semester and we had like a practical, like, mock studio class, oh my gosh, I was losing my mind because the amount of, like, it wasn't accurate and it was frustrating me for them because I'm like, look, I'm in a newsroom day to day and this is not how it works. I'll give you a simple example that will make everybody's blood will chill when you hear this. The show at school was on YouTube, right? It
Okay.
was just a YouTube show. It was live, but we were supposed to fill a 30-minute slot. Okay. So we would work all together as a team to build the show out, etc. Very basic I knew stuff. Okay. We would just finish at 26 minutes and people would be like, okay, we're done. And I was like, what? No, you're supposed to fill 30 minutes. We can't just go.
You can't just get off air.
Right.
You stretch, you do something, you dance.
And so this is one of the things, like, I took to the professor because I was like, he's like, well, we're just learning. I'm like, I understand, but you need to teach them that you can't just be 4 minutes short. Like, that's a death sentence in a newsroom. And I knew that. Right. So just small examples like that. So I think being practically in the field, like, once you're in there, you're really just trying to take in every bit of knowledge. And I will say that what I love is how much, and I'm going to say y'all because you were more in the news world longer than I was, but how much y'all have each other's back.
Mm.
That family, that teamwork, like, not that everyone gets along, but oof, the photogs helping the reporters helping the producers helping the directors. Like, it is truly a brotherhood and a sisterhood if done well, that I can't even, that it's going to get me emotional.
But I love that you say that because we speak about it with Toy in the first episode of the Honey Pod. And, Toy and we used to sit right next to each other in the newsroom, but we were part of the team that built a newsroom from the ground up in Louisiana. And I have to say, and we reminisced about that there was never a newsroom that we've worked since that worked the same way that we worked there. So the fact that you still saw camaraderie and you still saw us all working together and kind of, no, like you said, no matter how many disagreements we'd all have behind the scenes,
Right.
we would still get it together in such a way that because nobody else understood this job. That's the thing, right? Like nobody understands the hours. Nobody understands, being far away from home. Nobody understands sometimes getting into it with your own family who's maybe they don't even view the things that you're doing to be accurate. And we have a lot of the women on MM Jane group who, during COVID especially, who would really complain in there and get in there and I don't have any support from my family, and so it's a tough business. You're trying to make it on your own on not a lot of money,
Right.
far away from family. Maybe you're fighting with family. Maybe your home life is shitty. And so all you have is you and that newsroom, and you got to make the best of it.
Yeah. I mean, again, just being local, and then we worked through the holidays, right? And I remember working Thanksgiving, and I was so shocked at I was like, oh, aren't you sad? I was sad. I was really sad. I called my dad before I went to work that day, and I was like, I'm missing Thanksgiving.
I remember you came in.
I was
so
sad.
Vanessa, I don't remember the last Thanksgiving I spent with my family.
I was so sad.
And it's one of my favorite holidays.
Oh my gosh. But that's the thing. It just is so normal in the newsroom.
Yeah.
Everyone was just I don't do Thanksgiving. I don't, and I'm like, what? And it wasn't for lack of bah humbug. It's just not, it was just the normal.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really wrap my head around how most of the people that I met were just so individualistic. And I think my job right before the newsroom was in corporate America. And so it was a very stark difference for me, because in corporate America, you have every holiday off, and people are working from home, and you leisurely go home at 3, and you do cubicle decorations, and not that you're not working, but you're on Teams all day. You sit by the water cooler, you do your work as you have to. And to transition from that into a newsroom where I remember I walked around. Remember everyone would not make fun, but they'd poke fun at my desk because I had so many decorations. I had so many decorations on my desk.
You did. You did. The last station I had that many decorations was Louisiana, my first market. And after that, you're maybe there's a photo somewhere or two. And I'm all for a really nice desk. So I truly appreciated your desk. I appreciated Alyssa's desk, which had a little bit more photos. But generally speaking,
Ghost town desks.
It really, you're just there for 2 years.
I can't. You guys are so funny. I was so everyone was like, oh, look, she brought a Christmas tree. I'm like, are we not celebrating? What's happening? So yeah, it was definitely different for me. A good different, and very necessary, very necessary. I call it my training ground because it really molded me into now the supervisor I am, but also the person I am in the community. I am so grateful to know how much work and how much fight goes into a story, how much care and love and detail goes into writing, how much editing and sleepless nights goes into videography and photo shoots, and how things are decided as far as what gets put on air and stuff. And I love explaining that to the general public when I have opportunities, because I think the common folk take it for granted. Understanding it and being able to even now in this season, I've thought about creating my own independent contractor type of opportunity to go out and help grassroots projects or nonprofits better market themselves, because there's so much going on. There's never a lack of news.
No. It's a lack of understanding where you can find news stories.
Right. And this is one of the biggest things. I actually did a media training with a nonprofit once as a favor. And one of the most helpful things I taught them, that they were we didn't realize that's how it works. I told them, I said, when you're doing an interview, say the most important thing up front.
Right.
Because if a photog's coming out to like, and you're not have a reporter there, like we're scrubbing that so quickly. I'm not watching 5 minutes. I can't. And they were like, what? And I was like, as a producer, like if you're just scrubbing through sound, you're looking for the best soundbite. And as soon as you hear it, you're good. You're going to write around that. Now, that's not every producer, but just things like that, that I think would be helpful to people who are really passionate about what they do. Like, I think now working in a nonprofit, I'm so passionate about what we do. And it makes me sad that people don't fully understand like the intricacies of what we do as an organization and the people we serve. And so if I could advocate for that, if I didn't have the knowledge I did about the media, like I'm constantly telling our organization leaders, like, here's some ways we can, get some
Improve.
traction. And here's some ways we can also like tell these stories. Because ultimately, journalism storytelling, and
Right.
somewhere that got lost in some places, but ultimately that's what it is. You're doing the hardest thing. You are walking up to people in their hardest moments and trying to capture that in a way that it's going to do it justice, but it's not going to inflate that, but it's not going to be disrespectful, but it's also not, and it's like, I don't know how you did that. Like, I could not do that. I cannot walk up to a person.
I talk about it with Judy, whose sister was killed 3 years ago now. She messaged the newsroom because she didn't like the way that we were covering the story.
Oof.
And she was very unhappy with just the fact that we weren't naming her sister. She goes, she has a name. She, like, you should be using that. You shouldn't just be talking about her as an unhoused woman. And so she was very passionate. And of course, the story got passed on to me because for multiple reasons, right? Like Paulina can speak to people. Paulina can,
You can.
Paulina can calm the situation down. I can get the tears out. And I think I do everything that they tell you not to do. Like my mentors, I love them to pieces, but they would be like, it is, especially the photogs that I used to train with in San Francisco, they'd be like, Paulina, it's so unprofessional to cry. I cry at every single story that I go on, okay? Like there's not a story that I can't. If I'm covering a 6-year-old who just drowned, or I'm talking to a sister who literally just lost her twin sister to some guy who murdered her in a spree of other, murders, how do you not get emotional? How do you not just like,
No.
I will sit there with you and I will hold that space with you. And so I was sent in to kind of clean up and do the dirty work. And honestly, again, I think I stay human on it, Vanessa. And I think you learn, you don't take no personally anymore because that's part of the job. You hear more no's. I think MOS was the thing that taught me no's are just so part of your job. Man on the street, you will hear 10 no's before you hear one yes.
Which
listen. You're constantly rejected.
Yes.
Constantly. And so if it's not in the newsroom, then it's on air, then it's with the people. And you constantly have to just be okay with that. And I think you just transfer that over, that coupled with the empathy. I think I talk about this with Judy on the podcast as well. But for me, I've been through my own traumas. And I remember the way that the news had covered my dad's suicide. And it was like vultures coming at us, right? And so it was very hard to go from that. And I never would have thought I'd end up in news either. Sure. And so I always said, though, to my family and to my brother, I said, if I ever got the chance to be in a position where I'm speaking to people who just lost their loved ones, I would do it so differently. And I never did walk up to people and be like, I'm a news reporter. Can you tell me your story? No.
Right.
Right. Like if they were like, I'm not comfortable being on camera, I don't care how much the newsroom asked. We're not getting that story. That, like I'm not begging, I'm not pleading. I'm also not coming up to you with the camera right away, which I've seen some reporters do. It's just I go up to them as humans.
Well, and that's the thing, like you're called to it. And that's like, again, back to what I was saying earlier about purpose. When you're walking in your purpose, like I look now at like how I carry myself day to day in my job. It is a different type of hard. It is still hard, but it is a different type of hard. But I get it now, and I think I've even said this to you jokingly, like many times over the last year and a half in my new job, that I get it. I get why you stayed up late. I get why you were so driven. I get why you were not a quitter. I get why you were like, okay, how can we continue to, because you're called to it. It's what you're called to. I was not called to that. I was trying to find myself, but I couldn't. But now, like walking in what I'm called to, I'm like I just told you before we sat down to record, I'm like, I cried at work today. Like I just, and I didn't just cry. I cried in the CEO's office of all places. And I was embarrassed to all hell. But then at the same time, he's like, you care, Vanessa.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, I do care, but I don't want to care. Like, but that's the thing. Like, when you care so much, and ultimately, like, news is a service position. Like, you are in a serving place. Like, that is that person's. I say we like we're still there, but you are giving a window into this person's life, and you get maybe 3 minutes at most. Like, that's no, sorry, I'm thinking back lifestyle. She looked at me like, you're crazy. A minute and a half. I'm going
3
to
minutes if I sat there crying to the management going, but can we really talk about this? And so,
Everybody
yeah.
listening right now is like, is she crazy? 3 minutes? No, sorry, y'all. I worked in lifestyle, and so 3 to 5 minutes was the standard.
Yeah, it was if I cried into the news director's office asking for 3 minutes.
So a minute and a half. You get a minute and a half, right? But you're not even going to like let that person talk for a whole minute and a half. That you can't. You got to do all the other things, right? So I mean, I put myself in that position. Like, if I lost the person closest to me, or something traumatic happened, and you're trying to get that all in a tiny little thing, I would want you to care enough to talk to me long enough for me to say the most important thing.
Sure.
And you did that. And I've seen other people who are really good at that in the newsrooms, not a lot of them, but some of them. And I think that that is like what inspired me to go find myself somewhere else. Because again, like, I joked about it, but at the same time, I'm like, I want that feeling. I want that feeling of like excitement to go and do it. And now I have that feeling. I'm able to, yes, work is hard. And there's days where I'm like, oh, maybe I have PTO. But ultimately, like, my staff laughs at me because it's like the running joke when we have a really hard to serve client, which, just for context, everyone. So I work now in a nonprofit called Hope for Prisoners, which is a local nonprofit here in Las Vegas. It's a reentry service. So we help men and women transition from the prisons back into the community. And I particularly supervise a team inside one of the prisons and then a team in the communities. So we have really difficult clients. They're going through it. They're going through hard stuff all the time. Like, my calls I get are like, so and so's homeless, so and so's active addiction, so and so just got arrested, so and so, like, it's rough. And so one of the running jokes with my case management team is when they get a hard call and they come in and we debrief about it and I give them like my support, they'll just look at me and I'll go, all right, go call them and say X, Y, and Z. And they'll just go, because we get to, right? And I'm like, because we get to. And that is ultimately like the heart posture to have in whatever you're doing. If you don't feel that I get to, then you're in the wrong place. And that's honestly like the one thing, if you didn't remember anything I say because I'm talking so much, please carry that. Like, as someone who has reinvented myself many, many times, and I mean many times, I have a cosmetology license, I have a CPA degree. I was a bartender. I did stand up comedy. I worked on cruise ships. I was a tour guide, did so many other different things. I worked in events, like I told you, event management. I obviously worked in news. Like, it's crazy to say it all in one like swoop. But thinking about it, I'm like, no, I'm so glad that I kept going. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. And kept searching, because now, like, if I would have just settled for the first thing, I would have been an amazing hairstylist. Let's be honest. I would have ran a salon.
I think you would have been great, but I don't. And listen, as a daughter of someone who came from a hair salon, okay, it's wonderful, and there is a ministry in that as well. I grew up seeing my mom do exactly what I did in the newsroom, when I'm talking to clients, or she talked to clients, I talk to people
Right.
out in the street, and I would do the same exact thing because she's doing their hair. She's their therapist. She's their best friend. She's listening to all the gossip. And my mom was also very much, still is the same way. Even if the gossip came into the salon, it never left the salon. It was never allowed
Wow.
to, like, we cut it at the door. That's it. You can say what you need to say here, but it stays here. And it was always a safe space. And I think that was the same mentality I carried, which is why I always laughed. I knew all the drama of the newsroom, even with people who didn't necessarily, like, they weren't friends with me, but they'd still come to me and confide in me. And I'm like a vault, right? And
Yeah.
it's just, I will listen.
Yeah.
I will listen. And I didn't necessarily sign up for that. In news, I didn't necessarily sign up to be a breaking news reporter. I didn't know why I was in there. I fell into the job kind of like you heard it in your soul and in your spirit.
Yeah.
I did not hear that in my spirit. I walked into a newsroom and saw these big TVs in San Francisco, and everybody was yelling. There was like 2 different breaking news going on at the same time. One in New York, the assignment editor is yelling at the producer. It's so loud and chaotic. And I was like, this is like the inside of my brain. This is amazing.
Not the inside of your brain.
Seriously, it was because like listen, on the outside, and it's the same like when a breaking news is happening, right? There's so much going on in here. That I'm thinking of what am I saying? How am I looking? Am I gonna get the name right? Am I gonna make sure
Right,
that I hit all
sure.
these parts? And then on top of that, you're listening to the newscast, you're listening to your producer, you're listening to the soundbite, you're listening to what's happening in the newscast too, because you've been on your own story all day. So there is so much happening in that same moment. So yeah, I don't know that I knew that I was built for news. I walked into a newsroom and didn't leave until almost 10 years later, you know?
That's
And so
amazing. That's
I
wild. I've never done anything for 10 years ever. And like that blows my mind. And I think about it and I'm like, wow, like
8 years on air and 2 years off air.
here, the one thing I've learned is like you can be really great at anything. Anybody can be really great at anything. But if you're really great at the wrong thing, then you're never actually great. You're just mediocre. It's once you start being like one of the things I love so much about where I'm at now is that I'm constantly being challenged. And it's no knock against any other organization, jobs, or people I worked with, but I hit my ceiling and then I was like, okay, now what? And I'd get bored. That's truly why I would leave. I would just be like, I don't feel like, okay, next thing, right? And so
Yeah.
now it's like constantly feeling that challenge of, okay, well, I can't do that. How do I learn how to do that? And I feel that type of energy around me that is just it's addicting in the sense that I want to keep learning. And so there's so much to learn and to absorb and to do. But I ultimately like I go back to my newsroom days often. I go back to them often in my day to day in my job because even today I told you right before we sat down, like sometimes I have to go full producer mode. And I'm like, okay, we got a deadline to meet, we gotta move, like everybody get in line and boom, 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 boom. And I appreciate having that season because I'm able to do it with grace. And I'm able to do it in a place of like, it's not my everyday, but it's part of my days and I'm grateful for it. Otherwise, it's a skill I wouldn't have, you know? So it's definitely a season that I'm like, "Whew, we did that." It honestly kind of like shocks me sometimes. I'm like, "Who trusted me to sit in a producing chair?" Like that's
But
wild.
you were confident, girl. You were so we had video missing, we had things in the wrong space. We are confident going on that I am doing a great job. You are. Let's do this well and let's get a clean show.
The first
And then we
weekend
can
that I fully produced on my own with Paulina, we went into the show with things not in the rundown and she was having a literal panic attack and I was like, "It's fine." And I'm just like running ahead of her like the next the next block. It was bad. I'm sorry.
They,
But we got it
because you
done.
wouldn't even like let us go into the scripts at some point too. Like in the beginning, you were just like everything had to be done by you, and then I'd
Mhm.
go in there and I'd fix something. You'd go in and fix after me. I was like, no, it's fixed so that I know how to say it. What are you doing?
Yes, I was very perfectionist controller and the Lord broke that off of me now because now I can't perfect or control anything. Anything I do. It
And
is
you still love it.
I do love it. Yeah, I love it because it's the thing that I because I get to go home every night and go like, we helped someone.
Yeah.
Like regardless of what I did today, I helped somebody. Even if it was just helping them make an appointment or helping them, feel encouraged or listening to them for a second, whatever it was. I mean, I do a lot more than that, but I realize how much I have the Lord's helping heart and how much it's not to knock anybody else, but it's like it's really hard to serve a population that most people don't want to serve.
Sure.
Like when you think about like even in like the aspect of getting people to support our organization or donate. Most people want to give to places. They want to help people. Like when you would do stories and GoFundMe's, like people had GoFundMe's, those things would just go skyrocketing for like the widowlet, the widows, the children, like
Sure.
those are and I think they teach you that when you're going through your training in media, like there's certain populations that people will just They don't like it when babies get hurt or killed. They don't like it when women are abused. Like nobody wants that. And so everyone will rally and everyone will support. And I love that we should have that kind of community. I serve a population of the opposite. I'm serving the people behind the wheel who hit the kid in the car. I'm serving the people who pulled the trigger. I'm serving the people who got on drugs and did the horrible thing to the woman and beat her and left her with her kids. Like, that's tough to love those people because they don't even love themselves. So to know that I get to help them get a little bit closer to a healed version of themselves, and I'm not saying it's for everyone because trust me, I get it. There's people in populations that I don't have the patience or capacity to serve. But I believe that's why I love being a Christian, because we're representing, like, I truly believe we're representing the Lord's heart in different capacities. Like, I could never do what you do. I don't have that heart posture. I can support you doing it, but I don't have that heart posture. And vice versa. The people have told me, like, I don't know how you do that. How can you help that kind of person? I'm like, I don't know. I just know that that's the kind of person that do I see what they are? Yes. Do I think that it's okay that they did what they did? No. But I just have this overwhelming amount of grace and love for them that they even are like, why do you care about me like that? To the point where they're able to get services and whatnot. So I love that I landed, and I think if you're on the brink of taking a leap of faith, and it doesn't have to even be an employment, it can be a relationship, it can be in your own self, it can be in a move, it can be in whatever thing. It doesn't even have to be a big thing. It can just be like transitioning into a different capacity, as far as like maybe you're gonna get an animal, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, I think that absolutely, if it feels like it's going to open up a door of freedom, you should 1000% do it. Because the one thing I learned was, like, when I stopped trying to Paulina's point, control the rundown and write out every aspect of my life. I used to write down, like, here's my 5-year plan, 10-year plan.
So did I. And then my dad killed himself, and I was like, oh, there's no 5-year plan. There's a 1-year plan.
Right. I didn't write that down. I'm
That
like,
was
going
not
through
in
it.
my to-do list.
Like, this was not part of the
Yeah.
thing. Like, but here's the thing I have learned, like, yes, there's a time and there's a season to plan, but when you start getting locked in to something, like when I was going day to day and going, okay, well, I have to finish this contract. I have to, I was dying inside.
Mhm.
Like, I was being suffocated, and it's not even the newsroom's fault. It was just me not showing up well for me. And it wasn't until I stepped out of that space and was like free of my own self and that mentality that I realized, like, dang, there's a whole level of healing. And as my friend, like, I have learned a lot about myself in the last year and a half. And it's not even just about my job, but it has pulled me into a place of healing. It's made me realize things about myself that I'm like, dude, I didn't know those things were there. Like, just so many different layers. And I think that's what happens when you're in a place of really doing what you feel called to do. And that's why it's so important. It's not just about, like, oh, I want to serve my purpose so that I can, like things on Instagram that talk about serving your purpose. No, this is about, like, really walking in your purpose, because life is hard.
Yeah.
And you spend so much time in your workplace. you know?
I mean, I was married to my workplace, right? And that's something that we recently spoke about, because when you started and you were doing these insane hours, and you're still doing these insane hours, frankly, you were like, I get it. And the only thing I kept repeating to you is something that my mom now says to me, which is funny because she created this. She's like, Paulina, you have to remember to take a break. And I'm like, what break?
Yeah, when?
What break? Right? Like, I've been recording today. I've been up since 6 a.m. We're recording this at 8 o'clock almost at night. I didn't eat until 6 p.m. today. So it's like,
Same.
it's right. Like, you're just like, you're going. It's back to back. It's back to back. And listen, there are days in this season where I'm like, I have too much free time. Okay. And I'm not used to that. And I'm learning how to relax. But I think that there is a time and a place, but the only thing I keep going back to is don't burn yourself out.
Right.
Because
No,
that
for
is
sure.
something that I think we glorified in the newsroom a lot of like, keep going, keep going, keep going, these 15-hour work days, 16-hour work days. And sometimes, you're going on a 15-day stretch doing these kind of days.
Yeah.
And it's heavy stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like, and it's not easy. Or you've got like a political climate that's really rough.
Yep.
And then it bleeds into the newsroom. You've got personalities in the newsroom. You've got just other issues in the newsroom. It can weigh on you. And so you
For sure.
really have to start to advocate for yourself. And I think towards the end, that's exactly what I started to do in news, because when I was first in this industry, my gosh, I was so hungry. I mean, I go in 7 days a week to the newsroom, and on the weekends, it was the weekend crew who taught me how to anchor. They would sit there with me during their lunch breaks, because I'd come in and like we'd just all hang out, and they'd be like, okay, but you need to practice on how to be an anchor because they
Yeah.
want you to anchor. And I was like, I'm just gonna bomb at this and like literally tank this. I said, and they're gonna take me off. I didn't want to anchor. I had already so many issues in that newsroom that like I had this one anchor that I was working with who was just an absolute nightmare. And I was like, I can't do this. Why would I put an even bigger target on myself? And so it was this newsroom. So you talk about like everybody being like a family,
Yeah.
right? These guys would just, guys and girls would be like, you're going to go up in that seat. Right? I'm going to run the camera. She's going to run the prompter. The director's going to go in there and you're going to practice.
Yep.
And I go in every Saturday and Sunday, and these guys wouldn't let me. If I wasn't there, they were calling me.
See, and
They
that's
held
like
me accountable.
Yeah, and you know what? But that's the thing. Like they saw something in you, and they were like, and that's what I mean about like when you're walking. Like I know I'm saying it over and over, but it's so important when you're doing the thing you're supposed to do. Like there were some editors that I'm like, dude, like you are gifted. Like how are you doing that? And I don't say that to like downplay editing. Editing is I could never. It's one of those things that like no one thinks about.
Yeah.
Like the general public is like the people on camera,
Sure, we think
right?
of that because we need a good editor to put together the story, and
Yes.
or you become a good editor, and
But
then
man, I'll never forget. I had this vision for something, and I just was so. I would always like come up with these things. I'm like, can we do this and this and this and this? And the amount of times they'd be like, no. I'm like, oh, okay. But I had this vision for it was some political story, and there was an editor working that normally wasn't working, and so I said it to them, but I said it so like, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to do this, this, and that. And not even like 10 minutes later, he came back. He's like this. And I all about jumped out of my skin. I was like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
that is better than what I imagined it to be. And that is the thing, like, that is how the Lord creates us to be. We are meant to make things better. Like this whole podcast, right? Your honey pot and bees, like bees, they nurture, they create, and they make things better. That is what you do. Like if you're not making something better, then you're in the wrong thing. You're not in the right community of like, and that's not to like knock you. It's just then that's not where you're meant to be. And this is what I teach my clients because we're all about career shaping and that's the whole thing. Like I'm literally, well, now I'm a supervisor, but before I was labeled a career coach, which is hilarious. I love that the Lord gave me the title of a career coach. That's funny. But I was
he knew what he was doing.
He's like, oh, this one, the one that doesn't even keep a career for long enough to get a 401k, let's make her a career coach. One of the things I always say to this, I'm like, listen, if you do not truly see yourself doing it day and night, all day long, it's not for you.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't show up for free, it's not for you. And I'm not to say that you don't deserve to get paid because you deserve to get paid.
I don't advocate for what I used to do, but I do say that it's those sacrifices that got me into positions later. Right.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that I had a really great support system of friends and people who said, like you said, we see something in you. And even when I didn't see it in myself, I was willing to walk away from journalism, from reporting, from anchoring, because like I said, I had this one really nasty person who just kept digging and digging. And I was like, I just don't want to like, who wants to deal with that when they go into work? And so I remember Chris Welty was like, you're allowed to go home and cry and do all these things. He's like, what you're not allowed to do is quit. That's the only thing you're not allowed to do. And the 5, 6, 7 years later, 8 years later, I'm still going back to what those words, and I had my confirmation almost 5 years after I left that market. I thought I was going crazy, honestly. And it was wild, but it was the wife of this man, actually, ex-wife now, who called me and she said, I need your help. She said, and I know what you went through in that newsroom. Again, the Lord gave me that confirmation. I didn't go after anybody. I didn't have to go there and put a smear campaign. None of that.
Yeah.
None of that. I didn't even, it was, frankly, it was HR one day who heard him speaking to me and they said, I need you to come to HR and report that. This is out of control.
Wow.
And I remember coming from a hair salon, a little pod, right, where we were all like a family. I was like, I don't even know what that does. Why would I do that? You know, why would I make it worse? And so we're in these situations that are tough. We're in these kind of newsrooms that are really hard to navigate. And again, it's the people that you surround yourself with that will make or break it.
Absolutely. No, 1000%. And it is the environment. Like there is a difference in, I will say, like the type of management that I serve under now. Like what we're talking about, like the working overtime and things like that, right? I will get in trouble. They're like, go home, do not be here, leave, stop working. Like versus when I was not just in the newsroom, but other jobs I've had where, I would say like, hey, I haven't worked just 40 hours in months. And they were like, oh, that's kind of crazy. And just would keep, and I'm like, at the time, I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is normal. At least I'm getting paid for it, I guess. But now, like being in a culture where they see my value and they go, we don't want you to burn out. We don't want you to hit compassion fatigue. We want you to take care of yourself. We want you to have nice things. I remember one time we were having a staff meeting. This is my current job. We were at a staff meeting and we got up to walk out and the CEO came up to me and he goes, you good? And I said, yeah, I'm all right. He said, just all right? Take a day off. Come back when you're good. And I was like, what? He was like, I don't need you at all right. I need you at great. Yeah. And if you're not showing up great, then you need to take a break. And I'm just sitting there like, what? Like, I don't understand that. Because I think in general, America, this beast of just feed the beast, feed the beast. We're so fast paced. And media is the most fast paced. Like you're competing with social media. You're competing with like influencers. You're competing with like just like Twitter, like things at their fingertips, and you can't move fast enough. And unfortunately, it's an industry that is so hard set in old ways, in a lot of ways, that no matter how fast people in the newsroom run, they can't keep up because they're not being given the opportunities, the tools, the bandwidth to do. And so you're running a race you're going to lose, and that's hard. So it's like it's just a combination of all those things. And so if you have somebody around you who sees something in you and to be able to speak to that and able to nurture that like they did with you, like I'm so grateful for those people because ultimately I laughed when you were there on the weekends. You're like, I don't like being on air. I'm like, what? You're so good at that though. Like, and it blows my mind because my favorite, and I don't even think I've ever told you this, but my favorite memory of Paulina was actually not when you were on air on the weekend. Sorry. It was when we were doing a story about the weather and you were doing a hit somewhere in the city. You were just like reporting, but she got so excited about these clouds, you guys. She was like, if you guys look behind me, these ominous clouds that just started moving in. And I'm like, she is so excited about these clouds. But listen, the way you were so detailed made me excited. You're like, and they just started moving in and we're right here. And I was like, dude, this is like intense. What's happening? Like, I was so enthralled.
I really do love weather coverage though. I could never be a weather woman because that's just too much science and math is, listen, if Terry Foley thought I really couldn't spell and I can't spell, Terry, I love you, then you should really see me do math. Okay. It's like my brother is a mathematician in the family. You come to me for English and if you need something written well and you need something to be hard hitting, but you go to my brother if you need things counted and done right and your finances in order. That's the one who's got the whip on things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't be a weather girl, but what I could totally do is be like a storm chaser.
Yeah.
And I like, put me in, coach.
Excited.
Put me in, coach. You want me chasing the funnel? You want me like in the middle of it? Yes. I remember poor Lee was like, he called the newsroom and I didn't even know he said this, right? Because then I got a text message from the management and he was like, we just saw lightning. And I was like, that is great. And he's like, we cannot do live shots out here. And I was like, we can't? So then at that point, he was just like, okay, if you're so dead set on this, he like stayed towards the car. He had me come up closer behind the power from the power lines, right? And listen, I'm glad that there are people smarter than me because I'm like, how close can we get? And
You were so, but the point is
I love
that
it.
your passion seeped over into my interest. Like I did not care about a story. I remember it so vividly.
It's in the open too, guys. I'm like this,
She's
literally like
so excited. She's so excited. I'm like, no one's because it's Vegas. Like, if we were in like a city where like people were gonna get hurt, like it would be different.
But have you seen the flooding here that happens within 10 minutes?
I know it's bad flooding, but it was.
It is unreal. There should be no like. Come on, I've lived in cities that literally flooded from overhaul of rain.
Yeah.
And we get 10 minutes of rain here and the whole city's underwater.
There she goes. See, she's starting to do it again. She's getting passionate. She's getting heat up. Here we go. Breaking news. Paulina's out there creating sewer systems.
It's happening.
She's getting so excited. Yeah, no.
Maybe in another life, maybe I don't listen. I'm very when I get passionate about things, I get passionate about things, right? And
but that's
that
good.
seeps over. It is good. It drives some people crazy. And it's a good thing and a bad thing.
Right, I hear you, and I now share in that because it's like I get so passionate about. Sometimes like I get so passionate about incarceration because I'm just like, you have no idea what you're talking about. To think that like prison is the answer for all these people, like I get so heated about it now. I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. That every person behind bars just deserves to be there. XYZ, like. And I get so frustrated, but then I have to remember like people only know what they know. And ultimately, am I hurting or helping the situation? Like there's a time for everything, right? I love that scripture in the Bible that talks about there's a time to rest, there's a time to run, there's a time to lay down, there's a time to get up, right? And so it's very similar. Like I take every day in accordance to the Lord because I'm so grateful that the Lord led me to this job. Truly a God thing. To like bring it all full circle, the way I found my position was I did leave the station. I was unemployed for 3 months, the slowest months of my life. The slowest months of my life. I was like, what are we doing? Where are we going? And I had nothing. I depleted my savings. I got a call randomly out of nowhere from an old employer like years ago who was like, hey, we have a check in your name. Do you want it? And I was like, excuse me. And it wasn't just a couple $1,000s. It was like close to almost $10,000.
Wow.
And I was like, are you joking? And they're like, no, where do we mail it? I was like, hello? And the Lord's like, sit down. I said, sit down. And then I meet John, the CEO I work for now, like on a fluke. And then not on a fluke, but like through introduction. And he's like, okay, we're going to bring you on board. And now looking back, like it's the running joke of the staff that I'm the only person on staff. There's 2 qualifications to work at my job. You either have been incarcerated or you have a master's degree.
And you've been neither.
I have neither of those things. I'm the only person on staff with neither of those things. And so it's like people joke, they go, yeah, Vanessa just walked off the street and was like, God sent me. And I was like, no, I really did though.
But you did because, okay, I think you glossed over very carelessly here the fact that when you spoke to John didn't even have a position for you, ma'am.
No, there was no position. I didn't apply for anything. He was like, well, this is the thing, like, hear me so loudly wherever you are, even if it's just within your own organization or your own newsroom, speak up to who you are. And that is what I did. I was like, here's what I can do. I don't know what you're looking for, but this is what I can do. And if it's the right place, if it's the place that they see something in you and they want to help you, like I begged to stay at the station in another capacity. I tried so hard to stay in different places, but it just took a conversation of me saying, this is what I can do. And him going, okay, let me pray on it. Let me think on it. And then coming back and going, okay, here's where we'd like to place you. And I was like, all right, when do we go? Now, was it easy? No. Am I still learning? Absolutely. Do I think about, no, I don't think about quitting, but sometimes I think about just taking a really long vacation. But
and that's fair.
That's normal.
That's fair.
I think that's normal. So yeah, but it is very much a God thing. It's very much like I feel so much more alive. Like I've always joked with my friends that I've never been a serial dater, but I have been like a serial careerist. And so to be settled down in a career. I'm like, it's inspired me. I think about going back to school for law. I think about becoming a judge. I think about lobbying. I'm reading on my off time, like laws and ARs and NRs and understanding criminal justice more and just wanting to absorb that world more and just finding it so incredibly like fulfilling to be in that space and be like, okay, what else? What else? What else? What else? And so to go from a place where like I wanted nothing to do with what I with the newsroom, to be honest, to now be in a place where, oh, I want to know more. It's just crazy. It's like a whole coin flip.
I love this episode. Vanessa, thank you so much. And again, guys, this is another episode of the Honey Pod. We'll be right back here next Thursday. Thanks for watching.
For the extended version of Vanessa's episode, head over to our Patreon. A special thanks to our Hive sponsors, Madrala Law Firm, TrueCore Wellness, and Metamorphosis. Need real guidance beyond the mic? Head over to our Patreon. There you'll find Madrala Law Firm offering insider legal advice for journalists, creators, and entrepreneurs. And TrueCore Wellness, sharing mental health and body healing practices for the heart behind the hustle. Your support turns words into healing and stories into honey.